I was very proud to be in the U.S. Military. I loved being in the military. And I was young enough, when I went in, I didn't even consider the possibility of dying. Like everybody else, I believe, at the age of 18, barely 18, I think you have the sense that you're indestructible. I believe I owe a particular debt to the United States because they saved my life. When I say they, nobody in particular, but the country saved my life by spending 2 years in the Army, meeting some terrific people, having some terrific mentors in the Army. I've just been unbelievably lucky.
So I turned 18 and volunteered for the Army. Volunteered because I was an alien, as a matter of fact, technically an enemy alien by that time because the U.S. was at war. They couldn't draft me. But I could volunteer to be drafted. So I volunteered to be drafted on the basis of, very clearly, if I didn't volunteer, I would continue to be an enemy alien, and that was the last thing I wanted to do. My feeling is, at that time, there was absolutely no doubt in my mind that I had to fight, because if anybody had to fight the Nazis, I had to. I couldn't wait for somebody else to do it. I sometimes thought about how would I have felt fighting the Japanese. And I think I would have felt differently. Would not have been my fight. The Germans were my fight.
Of course, the band played when we pulled into port. We entertained when we weren't in battle. We would play music for the sailors. And when we had our battle stations, and they put the musicians on the gun stations. So I was assigned to some big guns at first, and then I was loading ammunition on the anti-aircraft guns. When a Japanese plane got through our security, the alarm bells went off on the ship, and we knew that we were under attack. And I recall they said, okay, there's a Japanese kamikaze coming right for our ship. And then the guns started to blaze. The whole ship exploded with fire. And I'll never forget, I pulled up the clips to pass to the next man who would load the anti-aircraft gun. And at that time, I can still recall the adrenaline rush that I experienced, knowing that it was life or death, and we better get this fella or he's going to destroy us. So I know what it means to have an adrenaline rush. I never had one before. It made me aware that every generation has challenges, and every generation has to be on guard, and there are evil people in the world, as they were in those days, and there are evil people now, and you cannot negotiate with evil. We knew that the United States was either going to live or die. I mean, that was the type of war it was. So we gave it all, our all.
When we were in Africa, there was a tremendous flow of Jewish people that came down from Europe, crossed over into Africa. They were fleeing because of the war. And because the Jewish parents that were in the little cities surrounding the airbase would come to the airbase and invite the Jewish soldiers and sailors to their homes for the holidays, for the weekends. That happened. And so you got to meet a lot of the people who were basically from Europe, who had fled Europe.
winning the war was extremely important, because if you think of the alternative, they joke and say we'd be speaking German and Japanese, and we Jews probably wouldn't even be here. As time went on, unfortunately, I noticed that most of the younger generation, or even the middle generation, don't remember those times and don't have a feeling for how important it was to win that war.
If I had to be at the same place at the same time, I would volunteer as I did at that time.
In the fall of 1944, we were receiving troops from Africa and interviewing them and classifying them and then sending them on north to defend the Battle of the Bulge. If the Nazi had prevailed in the Battle of the Bulge, who knows what would have happened throughout the world and this country.
I still remember the ship that we crossed on. It was called the SS Wakefield. We got into Liverpool. And we docked the ship. The ship was docked. And there were a bunch of limey Englishmen standing on the dock there. And they're yelling up, "And I guess you're going to tell everybody you won this one too." I'm not a hero by any stretch of the imagination. I'm like everybody else. And, you do some crazy things when you're in combat. It's not like what you see in the movies. In the movies, everything seems so controlled. It's complete chaos up on the front lines. People are afraid. I heard people crying. I mean, soldiers absolutely crying. They're afraid. And, they want to get out. There's no way of getting out at this point. I was doing a lot of praying. But, that was it.
War in general is a lousy thing. I mean, no one can like a war. There's nothing to like about it. But there's some things that are worth fighting for. And that particular war was worth fighting for. At least some Jewish people were saved.
Well, I was very, very anxious to do anything to fight Germany, fight Nazis. The day after Germany declared war in the U.S., I went down to the Navy Yard and tried to enlist in a Navy program, which I understand paved the way right away to becoming an officer. I rather like that idea. And I was not qualified, allegedly, because of my eyesight. I interpreted to mean that I wasn't qualified because I was a native of Germany. And even though I was a citizen at that time, that evidently did play a role. And I accepted that, but I still felt I ought to do something. So I joined the auxiliary police. This was a spare time activity. Learned to help the police do things such as guarding reservoirs to make sure that U-boat crews would not come and poison the water. I mean, there was a sense of hysteria in the country, and I felt very virtuous that I was doing my duty. When the time came and I got my degree, I didn't wait till I was enlisted. I enlisted on my own.
The Navy gave me an intelligence test, and of course I came out on top of the intelligence quota. And so the Navy sent me to radar school and submarine school and communication school, and they gave me like 18 months of advanced schooling to make me an intelligent electronic technician. My parents never managed to come here. They remained behind, and I think I got 2 or 3 letters from them, and that was it. And after that, nothing. And I assumed from the things I read in the papers that they would probably have been killed by the Nazis. And in fact, after the war, I found out that they had been.
Yes, it was very dangerous because supposedly I would crawl up ahead of the unit to see if the way was clear. and if it wasn't, they would shoot me or shoot at me. And as I said, I didn't get hurt, and I did my job. I used to carry messages from the front to the rear. I felt it was a learning experience. And every time you see these movies, you get so excited because it ends on a positive note, and you keep saying, well, I'm part of that group.
I'd seen the Air Force airplanes fly over in formation, and that seemed to me to be a lot of fun. Everyone was doing their part, and that's what really I felt like I was just doing my part. That's what I had chosen, and that's what I did. We were the generation that had to do something at the time, and being great is just being successful because we got the job done.
But in advance of every mission, they took out these safety keys from the bombs and loaded the bombs into the bomb bay tanks. And I took one bomb key from every mission, and I wrote the date and the mission and what the purpose was, and I sent it to my mother as a gag line. Someone looked at me, I say, that's for my grandkids. So I knew what we were fighting for. We were defending our lives. As Jews, we had to fight with all the skill that we had and all the courage we could muster.
What it did do good for me is embolden my belief in Beshert. And it was Beshert. I believe that now more than anything. And I base my entire life from now to the end, and I'm going to be 91, that we are all connected somehow to something that we can't explain, and should you even attempt to try and explain it.